"I can cure you," Naomi said, her small voice steady as she stood before Richard Whitmore's wheelchair. "All I ask is your leftovers." The room went silent. Richard blinked, then burst into laughter. It was bitter, mocking, the laughter of a man who had heard too many false promises. His voice echoed against the golden walls of his mansion. "You? Heal me? A ragged little girl from the streets?" His chest heaved as he laughed harder. "You think I'd trade my life for scraps of food?" But before Naomi could answer, another voice sliced through the air like a knife. "Do you really think we would believe some macumba from a slum girl?" It was Catherine Whitmore, Richard's wife. Tall. Elegant. Wrapped in diamonds that sparkled beneath the chandelier. She moved with the poise of royalty, but her beauty was poisoned by arrogance. Catherine walked forward, heels clicking against marble, her eyes locked on Naomi with disdain. "This is pathetic," she said sharply. "Richard, you've had the finest doctors in the world. And now, what? You're supposed to trust a barefoot beggar with fairy tales? Laughable." But Naomi did not flinch. She looked Richard straight in the eye. Her words were calm, cutting. "At night, your left foot burns like fire. The pain never lets you sleep. You hear chains in the silence. And in your dreams, you are drowning." Richard's laughter stopped. His face drained of color. His trembling hands tightened on the arms of his chair. No doctor, no nurse, no soul alive had ever known those details. Catherine froze for just a second, before forcing a cold laugh. "Coincidence? A lucky guess. Don't be fooled, Richard. She's a black street rat looking for scraps. That's all." Naomi's gaze never left Richard's. "You laugh now," she whispered, her voice echoing with certainty. "But everything is about to change." For the first time in years, Richard Whitmore felt something stir in his chest. Not hope. Not belief. Something darker. Something deeper. Fear. And from that moment, the war for his soul had begun. If you're curious to find out how a 12-year-old girl managed to see what millionaire doctors couldn't, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because this story of prejudice and healing will turn everything you think you know about who really has the power to transform lives upside down. The mansion never slept. Even in silence, its walls breathed with secrets. But that night, after Naomi's words cut through the air like fire, Catherine Whitmore could not rest. She sat before the grand mirror in her dressing room, brushing her raven-black hair with sharp, furious strokes. The reflection staring back at her wasn't calm. It was filled with rage. "How dare she," Catherine hissed, slamming the brush against the table. "Some dirty black girl walking in here, speaking like a prophet, humiliating me in my own home." To Catherine, Naomi wasn't a healer. She was a threat. Not just to Richard's health, but to Catherine's control. Because deep down, Catherine knew something Richard did not: he could be healed. She had read it in old reports, heard whispers from doctors who spoke of rare therapies still untested. She had buried every single one of those possibilities. Why? Because a healed Richard meant a Richard who could walk again. A Richard who would not need her. And Catherine Whitmore had no intention of being forgotten. The very next morning, Naomi returned, her steps light but determined. She carried nothing but a worn satchel and the same quiet fire in her eyes. Richard waited for her in the drawing room, curious despite himself. But Catherine was ready. "I won't allow this nonsense in my home," Catherine snapped, sweeping into the room like a storm. Her gown shimmered, her perfume lingered like poison. She threw a file onto the table, medical records, stamped with hospital seals. "Look," she said coldly, her voice sharp as glass. "These are the opinions of the best doctors in Europe and America. They all say the same thing. Permanent paralysis. No cure. Ever. And yet this girl dares to deceive you. Richard's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Catherine leaned close, her voice dripping like venom. She's playing on your weakness, Richard. On your desperation. Don't you see? She only wants food. Leftovers. That's all her kind ever want. Naomi stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Paper cannot silence truth. You know the pain I described. You know the dreams. These files did not write themselves into your soul. Richard looked between them, his proud wife with her polished lies, and the barefoot girl with eyes that held no fear. And in that moment, Catherine realized her first strike had not shattered Naomi. It had awakened her. Catherine Whitmore was not a woman who lost battles. When words failed, she turned to strategy. And when strategy wasn't enough, she used cruelty. That evening, she summoned the staff into the marble-floored kitchen, her voice low but commanding. Do not serve her, she ordered. Do not offer her a chair, not even a glass of water. Let her stand. Let her starve. If she claims to heal, let her prove she can endure first. The servants bowed their heads, unwilling to meet her eyes. None dared to question. The next morning, when Naomi arrived, she was led into the great dining hall where Richard sat at the head of the long oak table. Catherine was beside him, gleaming in silk and diamonds, her lips curved in a smile too sharp to be kind. Welcome, Catherine said sweetly. Surely a healer of such power doesn't mind joining us at the table? But no plate was set before Naomi. No chair was offered. Instead, Catherine lifted her crystal glass of wine, sipping slowly as Richard shifted uncomfortably. Naomi, however, did not flinch. She remained standing, her satchel pressed against her side, her eyes fixed gently on Richard. Sir, she said softly, your body has carried this pain for years. Your legs burn at night. Your chest tightens when storms are near. Last week, your fingers locked until you cried out. Am I wrong? Richard froze. The memory was too precise, too real. Catherine's smile faltered. Parlor tricks, she snapped quickly. She's been watching, guessing. Nothing more. Naomi stepped closer. Your pain speaks louder than papers. Louder than her denials. You feel it now, don't you? In your left side. A dull fire. Richard's breath caught. His hand pressed to his ribs instinctively. He hadn't told Catherine. He hadn't told anyone. Silence fell over the hall, thick as smoke. Catherine's fingers tightened around her glass until it nearly cracked. Enough, she shouted. She is nothing but a fraud. A filthy liar who dares to manipulate my husband. But Richard's eyes were no longer on Catherine. They were locked on Naomi. For the first time in years, there was a spark in them. Not of pain. Not of despair. But of hope. For years, Richard Whitmore had been a prisoner in his own body. Doctors called it irreversible. Therapists promised improvement but delivered only disappointment. Even Catherine had grown tired of false hopes, her patience replaced by cold distance. But now, with Naomi standing before him, the impossible seemed to whisper through the silence. Richard's voice was hoarse. If you truly have power, show me. Naomi nodded once. She placed her satchel on the table, pulling out a small clay bowl filled with herbs ground to dust, and a vial of oil that caught the light like liquid gold. She moved with reverence, her every action calm, deliberate, as though she carried centuries of wisdom in her hands. Catherine leaned forward, her laugh sharp as broken glass. This is absurd. Richard, do you hear yourself? Letting some girl smear dirt and oils on you like you're a corpse waiting for burial? But Richard silenced her with a raised hand. Let her try. Naomi knelt by his wheelchair. She did not ask permission again. Instead, she dipped her fingers into the oil and pressed them gently against his temples. A heat spread through him instantly, not burning, but alive. His breath hitched. For the first time in years, sensation traveled down his spine like an electric current. His hands trembled. Naomi began to hum. Low, steady, almost like a lullaby, but layered with words in a tongue older than the stones beneath the mansion. Her voice filled the air, and the walls themselves seemed to listen. Richard's heart pounded. His legs, dead for years, twitched faintly. His eyes widened. "I felt that," he whispered. "Catherine, did you see? My legs." Catherine's face drained of color. She shot to her feet. "No. No. This is manipulation. You're imagining it, Richard. Don't let her poison your mind." But Richard wasn't listening. His gaze was locked on Naomi, and for the first time in so long, it wasn't filled with despair. It was filled with awe. Naomi's humming ceased. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "This is only the beginning." Catherine's diamond ring scraped sharply against the table as she clenched her fist. Inside her chest, rage boiled. If Naomi could truly heal Richard, then everything, the money, the control, the power, would slip through her fingers. And Catherine Whitmore would never let that happen. The next morning, sunlight poured through the Whitmore estate's towering windows, but the house felt colder than ever. Richard was awake earlier than usual, his eyes sharper, his voice stronger. He even insisted on being wheeled to the terrace to feel the morning air. Naomi stood nearby, preparing another mixture of herbs. There was hope in Richard's gaze now, a dangerous hope, Catherine thought. Hope was what she had crushed for years, convincing him he'd never walk again. If that hope returned, so would his will. And if Richard found his strength, Catherine's reign over his fortune and decisions would crumble. She couldn't allow that. "Richard," she said sweetly, stepping to his side. "You had a good day yesterday, yes? But don't mistake a phantom twitch for a miracle. These theatrics won't last." Her eyes flicked toward Naomi with venom. "She's nothing more than a desperate girl from the slums." Richard's jaw tightened. "Yesterday, I felt life in my legs for the first time in years. That wasn't a phantom." Naomi spoke calmly, her tone steady as stone. "Healing takes time. But he will walk again." Catherine's lips curled. "How convenient for you, child. Promise the impossible and live off scraps while you pretend to be a savior." She moved closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You don't belong here, Naomi. You'll never belong." Naomi met her glare without flinching. "I am not here to belong. I am here to heal." Those words sliced deeper than Catherine expected. Her mask cracked, and for a fleeting second, pure hatred flashed in her eyes. Later that afternoon, while Richard rested, Catherine summoned the staff. In hushed tones, she gave orders. Naomi was not to be given food, not to be offered comfort, not to be respected. "Make her leave," Catherine hissed. "She's a parasite. If she won't go on her own, I'll see to it she's thrown out." But whispers traveled faster than commands. Some staff, loyal to Richard, began to watch Naomi with quiet respect. They had seen the tremor in his legs, the light in his eyes. And they began to wonder, what if the girl truly carried a gift? Catherine, however, had already decided. If Naomi would not leave willingly, she would crush her spirit. Because Catherine Whitmore had no intention of losing her throne. Night settled heavily over the Whitmore mansion. The chandeliers glowed, the gardens buzzed with crickets, yet a tension clung to the walls like smoke. Naomi sat quietly near Richard's study, preparing the herbs for his next session. Richard's health was improving, his voice steadier, his appetite returning, his eyes brighter. The impossible was beginning to look possible. But in the shadows, Catherine watched. Her patience had frayed to a single thread. Every sign of progress Naomi brought to Richard felt like another nail hammered into her power. If she didn't act now, she would lose everything she had built from his weakness. So, she devised a plan. That evening, Catherine dismissed the staff early, claiming Richard needed silence. She then summoned 2 guards who were loyal only to her. "Tonight," she whispered, "this girl leaves my house. I don't care how you do it, just make it look like she ran away." The guards nodded, their faces hard as stone. Later, when Naomi stepped into the hallway carrying a bowl of herbal mixture, the guards intercepted her. One snatched the bowl from her hands and smashed it to the floor, the liquid spreading across the marble. "You don't belong here," one of them growled. "The madam says you're nothing but a fraud." Naomi stood her ground, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I was invited here by Mr. Whitmore himself. If you lay a hand on me, you'll answer to him." The guards sneered. "He's too weak to save you." They grabbed her arms, ready to drag her toward the back entrance. But just as they forced her down the corridor, a familiar voice thundered across the hall. "Enough." Richard Whitmore's wheelchair rolled forward, his face burning with fury. "Unhand her this instant." The guards froze, exchanging nervous glances. Richard's hands trembled as he slammed them against the armrests. "Naomi stays. She is the only one who has given me life again. If anyone dares touch her, they will never set foot in this house again. Do you understand?" The guards retreated, muttering apologies. Catherine, who had stepped out from the shadows to witness her scheme, forced a brittle smile to hide her rage. But inside, her fury was volcanic. Naomi had survived the trap. Worse, Richard had defended her. Catherine knew then, if she couldn't scare Naomi away, she would have to destroy her completely. The next morning, the Whitmore estate was unusually quiet. Naomi was in the library grinding herbs into powder, her hands steady despite the storm she felt brewing all around her. She knew Catherine wouldn't stop, not after last night's failed attempt. Meanwhile, Catherine sat in Richard's private quarters, her presence soft, her tone dripping with false sweetness. She poured his tea, adjusted his blanket, and leaned closer, her words as sharp as knives wrapped in silk. "Richard, my love," she began, her eyes fixed on him with feigned concern, "don't you think it's dangerous to let that girl linger around you? She's young, ambitious, and from the slums. Girls like her see wealthy men as prey. What if she isn't healing you, but slowly poisoning you?" Richard blinked, unsettled by the suggestion. "Catherine. Naomi has only helped me. You've seen it." But Catherine pressed harder, lowering her voice to a whisper, as though sharing a terrible secret. "Or maybe that's what she wants you to believe. Small improvements to win your trust, while she drains your strength little by little. When you're gone, imagine what she'll gain. Fame. Money. Maybe even your fortune if she convinces you to sign anything." Her words dripped into his ears like venom. Doubt flickered across Richard's face. Later that afternoon, when Naomi entered the room with his herbs, Richard studied her differently. His gaze lingered on her hands, the way she mixed the powder into water. For the first time, hesitation clouded his trust. Naomi noticed immediately. "Is something wrong, Mr. Whitmore?" she asked softly. Richard didn't answer at first. His throat tightened. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Naomi, are you certain that what you give me is safe?" The words cut deeper than any wound Naomi had ever known. Her chest tightened, her pride stung, but she held his gaze. "I have no reason to harm you. My only wish is to see you walk again. If you doubt me, test every herb yourself. I have nothing to hide." Richard fell silent. Catherine, who lingered in the doorway pretending to dust a vase, hid her smirk. The seed of doubt had been planted. But Naomi wasn't one to break easily. That night, as she prayed under the stars, she vowed to stand stronger. She knew Catherine's lies would only grow bolder, but so would her own resolve. The following day, Naomi returned to the mansion with a fresh satchel of herbs gathered from the forest edge. She carried them carefully, wrapped in cloth, her heart steady despite the tension she felt in the halls. She knew Catherine was watching her every move, waiting for the perfect chance to strike. And that chance finally came. While Naomi stepped out of Richard's room to fetch water, Catherine quietly entered. Her eyes darted around the room until they landed on Naomi's satchel, resting on the table beside Richard's chair. With a sly grin, she pulled a small vial from her pocket, a bottle of sleeping powder she had secretly purchased from a discreet apothecary in town. She sprinkled it into the pouch of herbs, shook it lightly, and stepped back, her face glowing with wicked satisfaction. "Let's see how your precious healer explains this," she whispered. Moments later, Naomi returned. She poured a mixture for Richard, unaware of what had just transpired. Catherine stood nearby, her arms crossed, her eyes hungry for the moment the truth would unravel. But as Richard lifted the cup to his lips, his nose twitched. He paused. "This smells different," he murmured, frowning. Naomi's brows furrowed. She sniffed the liquid and froze. This was not her mixture. She knew every scent, every note of her herbs, and this was tainted. Before Richard could drink, Naomi grabbed the cup and set it aside. Her voice trembled, but not with fear, with controlled fury. "Someone has tampered with my work." Richard's eyes flicked from Naomi to Catherine. Catherine clutched her chest with feigned innocence. "Are you accusing me, Naomi? How dare you? You bring strange herbs into this house, and now you blame others when they reek of poison?" Naomi stood firm. "I do not need to accuse. Truth always reveals itself. Allow me to test this mixture before anyone drinks it." Richard, torn between the two women, gave a slow nod. "Do it." Naomi lit a small flame and performed a simple test with water and ash, one taught to her by her grandmother. The liquid darkened unnaturally, proof of corruption. Richard's face hardened. His eyes narrowed toward his wife. Catherine's smile faltered, her mask slipping for just a moment. Naomi didn't speak further. She didn't need to. The truth was beginning to corner Catherine. But Catherine was far from finished. Catherine had reached her breaking point. Every plan she had set against Naomi had crumbled like sand slipping through her fingers. Richard, once fully under her command, had begun to see the cracks in her mask. And Naomi, that girl from nowhere, that black healer with nothing but stubborn faith and a satchel of herbs, was becoming harder to erase. Late one evening, Catherine stormed into Richard's chamber. The firelight painted her face in harsh lines, her eyes gleaming with something between rage and desperation. "Richard," she hissed, her voice sharp, "this charade has gone on long enough. You have to choose, her or me." Richard, sitting in his chair, looked at her with weary eyes. His strength had begun to return in small, quiet ways. He could feel life stirring in his body again, the dull ache of muscles waking up after years of silence. He knew Naomi's hand in this. And Catherine knew it too. "You're my wife, Catherine," Richard said slowly. "But Naomi is not my enemy." Catherine let out a cold laugh. "Not your enemy? She's poisoning your mind, filling your head with false hope. Look at you, you actually believe you'll walk again. All because of some girl's fairy tales and weeds she plucks from the ground." Richard's jaw tightened. "She has given me more than you have in years, hope." Those words struck Catherine like a blade. Her mask shattered. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "If you let her stay, if you let her keep working on you, then I swear, Richard, I will walk out of this house and never return." The room fell silent. The crackle of the fire was the only sound between them. Naomi, who had been standing quietly in the corner, lowered her gaze. She knew this was the moment Catherine had been working toward, to force Richard into a choice. But Richard did not hesitate. If leaving me is your answer to truth, then perhaps you were never here for me at all. Catherine's face went pale. She had gambled everything, and lost. Her hands trembled as she turned toward the door. But in her silence, Naomi knew something dark was still burning in her heart. Catherine was not finished, not yet. The Whitmore mansion had never felt so quiet. Richard sat in his study, his breath heavy, his legs trembling under him. For years, those legs had been nothing but dead weight, mocked by his wife, ignored by the world. But tonight was different. Tonight, something impossible had happened. Naomi stood beside him, her hands steady, her eyes never leaving his face. "Try again," she urged softly. Richard pressed his palms against the desk, his muscles straining, sweat beading across his forehead. Slowly, painfully, his body rose. The chair slid back, and for the first time in years, Richard Whitmore stood on his own 2 feet. A sharp gasp filled the doorway. "Catherine." Her eyes widened in disbelief, the glass of wine in her hand trembling. "No, this isn't possible," she muttered, her voice breaking. "You're supposed to stay broken. Do you hear me? Broken." Richard's chest heaved as he steadied himself. He looked at her, not with fear, but with a strength she had never seen. "You wanted me weak," he said, his voice low but firm. "You mocked her because of her skin, because of her courage. But Naomi healed me." Catherine shook her head, stepping back as though the truth burned her. "No. You're nothing without me. Nothing." Naomi's gaze pierced her, calm yet powerful. "He's free now. And no amount of hate can change that." Catherine's fury shattered. The glass slipped from her hand, crashing onto the marble floor. She turned to the guards for support, but this time, they didn't move. They had seen the miracle with their own eyes. Her power was gone. Richard straightened, his legs trembling but strong enough to carry him forward. He reached for Naomi's hand, his voice breaking with gratitude. "You gave me back my life when I had given up on it. And no one, not even my wife, can take that away." Naomi smiled through her tears. She hadn't just healed a man. She had broken chains. And in that moment, everything changed forever. If Naomi's courage and Richard's transformation touched your heart, then don't leave without subscribing, liking, and sharing this story. More powerful tales like this are waiting for you, stories of struggle, hope, and victory that you don't want to miss.